A seminal theory in the decision sciences is the rational decision theory. The rational decision theory states that individuals use rational, well thought out calculations which helps one make rational or optimal choices and achieve outcomes that align with one's overall goals and personal objectives. The foundations of the rational decision theory can be traced back to the contributions of the economist and philosopher Adam Smith. The propositions of the rational decision theory became so widespread that they were soon applied across various disciplines such as political sciences, sociology, philosophy, behavioral economics, and cognitive psychology, to name a few. However, the ideas of the rational decision theory were put to question by the Nobel Prize-winning scientist Herbert Alexander Simon. Herbert Simon asked a fundamentally different question than those proposed by the rational decision theory. He asked, how do human beings reason when the conditions of neoclassical economic theories, such as the rational decision theory, are not met? He was the father of a concept called bounded rationality, which was proposed as an alternative basis to the propositions of the rational decision theory. Bounded rationality proposed that rationality is limited, and when individuals make decisions under these limitations, rational individuals will select a decision that is satisfactory rather than optimal. In his Nobel Memorial Lecture, Simon in 1979 stated that the models of rationality requires the knowledge of all the relevant alternatives, their consequences and probabilities, and a predictable world without surprises. However, these conditions are rarely met in most of the real-world decision-making scenarios. Prior to Simon, the founder of the modern Bayesian decision theory, Sauvage, in 1954, had already made similar observations. Sauvage called such predictable perfect knowledge worlds as small worlds, which were to be distinguished from the large worlds. According to Sauvage, a small world was a situation in which all the relevant alternatives, their consequences and probabilities are known, and where the future is certain, so that the optimal solution to a problem can be determined. On the other hand, a large world was a situation in which some relevant information is unknown or must be estimated from samples of smaller information, and the future remains uncertain, violating the conditions of rational decision theory. Thus, in other words, the Sauvage's large worlds best approximated the real worlds in which we make decisions. So, how do humans make decisions in such large worlds? The answer: cognitive heuristics. Because such large worlds provide us with incomplete information, it turns out that we make the best of what we have. That is, we work with incomplete sets of information acquired from small samples of instances and experiences that occur in such large worlds. In other words, we make use of cognitive heuristics to navigate the decision-making in these uncertain large worlds. So, what is a cognitive heuristic, or heuristics for that matter? A heuristic is a strategy that ignores part of the information with the goal of making decisions more quickly, frugally, and/or more accurately than more complex methods. The origin of this term goes back to the ancient Greek verb heuriskein, which means serving to find out or discover. As opposed to algorithmic thinking, heuristics are sometimes referred to as mental shortcuts or rules of thumb. A key function of a heuristic is to reduce the complexity of a given decision-making problem at hand by ignoring part of the available information or by searching only a small subset of all possible solutions. Researchers Shah and Oppenheimer in 2008 proposed that all heuristics rely on effort reduction principles by one or more of the following ways. They tend to examine fewer cues from a given decision-making scenario. They reduce the effort of retrieving the cue values. They simplify the weighting or the importance given to certain cues. They tend to integrate less amount of information, or they examine fewer cues to begin with. Now, although heuristic reasoning is useful in the context of making decisions in these large, uncertain worlds that do not give us access to all of the information, relying on small samples of information can make these mental shortcuts error-prone. Researchers state that we pay a price of relying on these shortcuts because the lack of access to the information can sometimes lead to undertaking a risk of committing systematic biases and or fallacies in our reasoning. In other words, heuristics can sometimes become error-prone. So, if these are error-prone, why do we then rely on cognitive heuristics so frequently? Researchers propose two different answers. First of all, they state we use cognitive heuristics because of evolved capacities, and secondly, because humans perform accuracy-effort trade-off. Now, heuristics are readily used because they can exploit evolved human capacities. Thus, they are simple to employ as opposed to learned or trained capacities. For instance, consider a commonly used heuristic called recognition heuristic. The recognition heuristic is a cognitive heuristic wherein one places a higher weight or importance on a familiar cue or object than an unfamiliar cue or object when making a decision. The recognition heuristic, for instance, only ever considers the recognition cue. When given a choice, one alternative which is recognized versus another alternative which is not recognized, the person goes on to choosing the recognized cues. This heuristic exploits the evolved capacities of recognition memory. Because they exploit the evolved capacities, heuristics are simple, fast, and frugal, all aspects that help us make efficient decisions. Additionally, since they don't require any further training or additional learning or any kind of overt understanding of the world, because they exploit the evolved capacities, they can be employed by anyone. In other words, they're universal. Another classical explanation is that people save efforts with heuristics, but they do so at the cost of accuracy. Pine and colleagues proposed another line of research which viewed decision-making agents as adaptive decision makers. Using computer simulations, Pine and colleagues tested the accuracy of various preference strategies, both simple and complex, under conditions of time pressure, or when the inputs to the strategies and the options attributes were highly correlated. The results were then compared with people's actual strategy selection under the same conditions. The key insights deduced from this line of research was that people are highly adaptive decision makers, switching between strategies based on a trade-off between a strategy's prospective accuracy and the time and cognitive effort required to implement it. This meant that we undertake an accuracy-effort trade-off during decision-making, which is why we use heuristics. According to this accuracy-effort perspective, humans rely on heuristics because heuristics allows information search at reduced computational costs, time, and effort, at the cost of a trade-off of some loss in accuracy for a faster and more frugal cognition. Two interpretations of this trade-off has been proposed. The first one is referred to as the rational trade-off, and the second one is referred to as cognitive limitations. Rational trade-offs state that not every decision is important enough to warrant spending the time to find the best course of action. Thus, people choose shortcuts to save the effort. In such scenarios, relying on heuristics can be a more rational strategy in the sense that costs of efforts are higher than the gain in accuracy. This applies very well to the everyday decisions that we take for small things such as buying a particular ice cream or choosing if you want to have a banana or an apple, or buying products or perfumes. You can see that in these everyday scenarios, it's not always required to undertake a detailed analysis of all possible options, and thus using a heuristic in this scenario is absolutely valid. Another explanation pertains to the cognitive capacity limitations. Almost all animals have some form of cognitive capacity limitations. Capacity limitations tend to prevent us from acting rationally because we lack the cognitive capacity or the resources required to make the detailed algorithmic thinking. Thus, it makes it challenging to account for all the possible pieces of information before making a decision, and thus it forces us to rely on heuristic thinking and therefore resort to mental shortcuts. These are sometimes considered to be the source of judgmental errors. The accuracy-effort trade-off is regularly touted as a potentially universal law of cognition. And thus, these reasons make it valid for individuals to make use of cognitive heuristics. Today's video was brought to you by the Braincyclopedia channel. If you liked our content, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Also, leave us a like and let us know you liked the video. Share this video with someone you think will benefit from today's content. Finally, do not forget to comment what you thought about the video and/or any other future video requests. And finally, follow us on all of our social media sites. We'll see you in our next video.